Hello and welcome to Tell Me About Your Game, the show where we interview new board and tabletop game designers about the projects that they're working on so that we can get the word out about them. And today we have Chris Harglerode, the designer of Crown Dagger. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about Crown Dagger? What would your elevator pitch for the game be?
Elevator pitch. I guess it's sort of a tableau builder that uses bidding to acquire the cards that are going to actually help you continue bidding and then also help you for points at the end, which is also bid on. So it is fast. It is low downtime, a lot of interaction, and gameplay is very smooth.
Okay. So why did you decide to make this game? What inspired you to put Crown Dagger together?
This game was a little bit of an accident. I started making little tiny, travel games for, me and the girlfriend to take camping or road trips, whatever. But I wanted to test my hand at like making something like a proper box board game. And so my first thought was I was just learning about mechanics and things like that. So I was looking up on like Board Game Geek, popular mechanics in a lot of the most popular board games, worker placement, things like that. So I started making this game as a whim to just see what I could come up with. It started as like worker placement, a basic worker placement game, tableau builder, like a lot of games you've probably seen like that. But I wanted to try a different twist on it, I guess. So I was like, how can we do worker placement, but it's more secretive, or maybe you don't know, or maybe they have power levels or things like that. And so it slowly morphed and it became this thing where you're placing these tokens down and each one has a power. It might represent a worker per se, but it's technically not in terms of mechanics. And as it evolved, I slowly learned that it had become what is more commonly known as bidding, which I didn't care for the term myself, but that's kind of what the game became, but the theme still felt kind of like worker placement. And so once I realized how well that worked and the flow of it, I was like, okay, well, what else can I add to this game to make it more interesting? What kind of climax can I add to the end of it? What sort of theme can I add to this to make it more interesting or explain why you're doing all these things? And Crown Dagger is sort of what it came out to be.
So who's the audience for this game? Who do you think would be most interested in it?
So it's a medium weight board game, so people who are going to want to do some thinking. There is a little bit of mental load on this as the game progresses. In the beginning, it's not so much; it flows pretty well. But people who are willing to put in a little bit of mental process to go through, they're going to have, by the middle or end of the game, they could have anywhere from 7 to 11 cards in front of them that all might do things. So people that can pay attention and can handle all of that. And then also people who actually like things like bluffing and there's people that like table talk. I found that this game has a lot of table talk potential. So people that are going to like that sort of thing, like the secrecy sort of thing, bluffing, that kind of stuff. That's probably the primary audience. I've found some people who are more into lightweight games can handle this one. And people who like heavy board games can come back and somewhat enjoy this one. So, but I'd say that's probably where the main focus would be.
So maybe even possibly a sort of a transitional game from folks who have been playing maybe some lighter weight games into more of the middleweight Euro.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, I think I can see behind you a collection of board games.
Yeah.
And most of us who design board games have played a lot of games. Were there any specific board games or maybe even video games that you drew upon for inspiration as you were designing Crown Dagger?
When I first started looking at mechanics I wanted to utilize, worker placement again was kind of the big one. So at the time I was looking at most of the games that I knew of or had played that implemented that. So things like Agricola, Everdell, Viticulture, stuff like that. I was kind of looking at those to give me an idea of kind of how that was implemented in other places. But as the game started to evolve into something else, I haven't really found any other games kind of like this, so it was really hard to find anything that I could use as inspiration directly. So the other inspiration I had was just my love of history, and that's kind of where the theme came from. Some television shows or movies, when a king dies and everything goes bad, and everyone's fighting for control. Like, so little bits of pop culture there, and then just a few references from other games that maybe have similar mechanics.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got some unique ideas in there. But what would you say are your core design principles? I know when I design a game, um, I usually start with one or two ideas that I've determined as, to lack of a better term, non-negotiable. And many facets of the game may change, but those core elements remain. Do you have any of those core elements that you had in mind at the very beginning when you were making Crown and Dagger?
At the beginning, no, and that's only because this game itself was a learning process for me. So in the process of designing this game, I was researching and reading up and learning about a lot of different mechanics. And in so doing, I was also learning about different design theories for board games. The difference between American games, Euro games, this kind of stuff. What sets them apart, things like that. And over the course of all of that, I started to discover certain mechanics that I generally, as a player, don't like, and then also with conversations with other people out there, what kind of mechanics they generally don't like, or like what are some of the bigger complaints about popular games. And so I've sort of landed on a kind of, I guess, a few core tenets for my design is um, I like take that, but I feel like it needs to be a fit for the game. I feel like some players love that sort of interaction, and a lot of players don't like that. So I want to make sure that I don't come with a game that looks nice and fun and cozy, and there's a bunch of take that in it. I don't want that. I want my theme and I want my mechanics to match. I've seen a lot of, I'm not going to name any, but I've seen a lot of designs out there that look fun and cozy, but then you start playing it and they're cutthroat. And I'm like, that's a total mismatch of customer expectation and gameplay. So I try to make my designs and mechanics match. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have D&D and board game nights at my house. I host twice a week, and I love getting together with all my friends and playing board games. And we play just about anything, but I think the most fun part about the game is the interaction between the players, whether it's table talk that's not encouraged by the game, or it's rules and mechanics that actually encourage that sort of thing. I really like that sort of thing. I'm not a fan of playing games that feel like I'm playing solitaire with a person at the other end of the table. That's not fun for me. So I want to find games that have high interactions, and not necessarily negative ones unless they fit the theme. And then I guess the third one I would say is downtime. I'm not a fan of downtime, not because I don't necessarily like it. I don't mind it. I play D&D. I'm used to sitting around for 20 minutes waiting for turns to come around. So like, I don't mind it. But I know a lot of players hate downtime. And I also understand how downtime can also make a game feel like it's chugging along. And so downtime is something I'm always cognizant about. And I want to make sure I limit as much as I can and make the game loop as smooth as possible. So those I would say are probably my three main tenets.
Okay. So it almost sounds like this is, based on my quick overview of it, has a very Euro look and feel to it, but it sounds like there's also some very distinct non-Euro elements to it. Like is there some degree of there's some degree of take that in this game, but
very little bits. There's very little bits. I would say there's probably a couple cards here and there that might do a little bit of that, but it's more like preventative. Like, okay, we're not going to let you do something this round, but we're not like stealing anything from you. We're not completely, immobilizing you. It's just small ones like that. Most of the cards and most of the game is usually gaining something off of someone else's success or the game state itself. It's more like that. So it is a little more. It is definitely less of take that. But because of that, there's a higher degree of interaction because you've got to know what people are doing and how everything's interacting.
Yeah, so you definitely not describe this as one of those what they call like a heads down game where you're just staring at your board, your personal board, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing, and it's just kind of a race that
I mean, you can. It's not as like going to force you to look at everyone else's tableau because let's be honest, that's a lot to keep up with.
sure.
But for the players that like to do that or want to do that, this
Oh, okay.
game allows it totally, yes. But you don't have to necessarily do it.
Oh, interesting. So there's a little bit of flexibility there in how you want to approach it.
Correct.
Okay. Um, so what would you say are the key mechanics that define Crown and Dagger that really make the game what it is?
The bidding is what it ended up turning into. I was calling it like secret worker placement there for a while until I realized that it's basically just bidding. I think mine sounds better, but
It sounds more intriguing.
it does. So the bidding mechanic around the game, the main game loop, is actually the biggest part of the game. It's the main game. It's how you're going to collect all your tableau and build that out. And there is a mechanic in there where once you place your your workers, we call them agents. But once you place those, each room is revealed in turn, and so the total sum of each player is going to determine if you win that room or not. So there's like almost bits of area control there in a way. And so the idea was that like once it's revealed and summed, that's not the end of it because you have the option to withhold one of your agents. So like you usually go around in turns, place an agent in a room that you might want, and then everyone does that in a circle. And as soon as everyone's placed everyone, you have the option to withhold one of your agents that you can use to challenge the results in a room. So now players can decide, do I want to overcommit all of my agents on the board? Do I want to hold one back and see if maybe I might potentially be able to win a room that I might lose? So it gives players more options and more strategy. So I feel like that's a big part of the game. And through playtesting, I found that that's a lot of people's favorite part of the game. And I'd say the other unique part about it is that this game has a climax. There's no, okay, someone scored, game over. It's not, or it just comes to an end after so many rounds. It's not like that. This game actually has a climax, like a story. I generally like heavy themes, and so it has a climax where you've got a set of council members. This will make more sense when I describe the theme of the game, but you'll have council members that are actually going to score your tableau. So the way you've built out your tableau, they're going to score it based on the way you've constructed it. But in order for them to score it, you have to actually take control of them through bidding. So at the very end of the game, once you've built your tableau and you've done everything you can, there's one more round of bidding, but you're bidding on all of these council members, and whichever ones you are able to claim, they will score your tableau one time for like an extra boost, but that is sort of like the climax of the game.
So would it be fair to say that your scoring throughout the game is basically just scoring potential, and it's not until you get the council members that you actually know what your score is?
Yes and no. So each of the cards from your tableau are going to give you points no matter what.
Okay.
And that's public knowledge. That's everyone can see that. So you know that. But players also have the option to collect objectives, which is also going to score them based on like the structure of their tableau. Like you need 2 of these, 1 of these, you'll get this many points, right? Those are private, right? So players can see everyone's tableau publicly and they know how many points they might have up to the climax, but they don't know how many objectives they have succeeded on. They don't know how much those are worth. And also, there's no telling who's actually going to win the council members until they're won. So you don't really know where you stand until the climax. It used to actually be that there was a score track and you could see how you were doing the whole way up. So by the time you got to the end, if you were too far behind, you're like, yeah, I'm going to lose. I give up, right? So I found that by keeping some public, some private, and then having it all kind of coalesce at the end, made the experience much more interesting, much more fun, and it made the council have more punch to it.
Is the council fixed from game to game, or is there a variance in the council members from game to game?
Yeah, there's variance. It's a 12-card deck, and you are the number of players is how many cards you draw face up. So they're public knowledge the whole game, so you can see kind of what you're working towards. But then there's always an additional 2 that are face down that you won't
Mm.
see until the climax. So you've got some known, some unknown.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Hmm. So, one of the things, again, that I've always struggled with as a designer is I will come up with ideas and they'll be interesting to me and I'll find them fascinating to design. And then it gets to the game and the playtesters look at me and go, but that's no fun.
Yeah.
So there's always the struggle of like saying, where is the fun in my game?
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to
Yeah.
ask you, where's the fun in Crown and Dagger? What keeps people coming back to it? What would you say it is?
I think again, it's that core loop of bidding. People actually really enjoy that part of the game. They love committing their agents to certain rooms. They love seeing the buildup, of where people are going, changing their mind and maybe moving to a different one. And then as they're being revealed, the sort of like the quick little fight to like get that room or something like that is really fun for people. And they really enjoy that loop. I've had a lot of people say it just feels smooth, it feels polished, it just makes sense. Usually, it takes one round and people just get it. And so I think that's the real fun because I think, and most of the time, that's usually when I see during playtests. That's when I usually see most of the oohs and the ahs. Is when someone like maybe challenges the results of the room and is able to capture that. I got it. Yeah. And the other player's like and then we'll get the next one and that kind of stuff. So that seems to be the fun, which I actually really enjoy that because that happens the whole game. That's just not like one part. That happens every round. So I would say that's probably the biggest fun is there's like just a quick little uh, um, fight each room, each round, and it kind of adds up, and everyone just has fun with it.
It sounds good. I mean, I just say one of the things that I really like the idea of the council at the end. It reminds me of a game that I've played several times that is not terribly well known. I don't know if you've ever heard of Argent, the Consortium. It's a fantasy style game, but it's got a somewhat similar council mechanic at the end, where you never know exactly where you're going to land in that. So that climax. It sounds like yours is probably a lot smoother mechanically
I
than
hope so.
Argent's. But that idea of having an actual climax is something I've always enjoyed in a game. And I don't think enough games have a climax like that you're building toward almost naturally.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a good time to let's just dive into the game a little bit.
Yeah.
So here we have the quick layout of Crown and Dagger on Screen Top GG. Do you want to walk us through it?
Yep. All right. So this is the board. You could imagine this is probably a castle with the different rooms. Again, since my games are theme heavy, let's cover the theme real quick first. So the theme is that the king has died. He has left no heirs, and so his council has decided that they are going to convene to choose a new ruler among all of the heads of all the noble houses, which that's who the players would be. The players are the heads of these noble houses. They have been called to the castle, while the council will convene to pick a new ruler amongst all of them. So while the council is convening, every player has come with their a pool of their agents, their house agents, that they are going to basically send throughout the castle to gain allies to pull to their side to help sway the council in their favor to choose them. So that's what most of the cards in the game are ally cards, and these allies are going to obviously give you influence. That's my victory points is basically influence points. So they're going to give you a baseline of influence points, and then they're also going to have 3 tags on them that will then help determine how well the council will score them. So that's effectively like the theme of the game. So while they're convening, you're sending your agents out to collect and pull as many allies to your side as possible. So if you can imagine the board as basically as a castle with 8 rooms in it. And the idea here is that each player, I've got this set up for a 4-player, but each player basically has 5 agent tokens, and they're numbered 2 through 6, and this is sort of, I guess, their presence or power level. And the idea is that you will be placing each person will be placing a token into any of these 8 rooms one at a time, going clockwise to determine or to set where they want what room they want to go in, what do they want to go after, that sort of thing. And so the 8 rooms, the 4 corner rooms, this is going to be where you're going to collect your allies. So these are the main cards of the game. This is where a lot of the gameplay actually will occur, which we'll cover later. But just know that there's the garden, there's the throne room, there's the chapel, and there's a library. 4 different rooms, and each one has its own identity. All of the allies sort of have their own unique abilities that are within that certain room. And then you've got 2 more rooms. This room will give you a resource that's known as favor, and this one will award you a resource for gold. And then this one down here is where you can score objective cards. So you'll be able to, if you win this room, you'll be able to actually draw and keep some objective cards. So it's like an extra scoring chance, but it's private. And then the final room, which actually would be the first room to resolve, is the armory here. And the way the armory works is if you win this room, you basically get additional bidding tokens that you can use for the rest of that round, which end up becoming really, really important and really fun for people to use because they can be used a slightly different way. So like the way a game loop would work here is, we would all the players would go around. They have their 5 agent tokens, and they would all go around starting with the first player, and they would start bidding. So let's say blue says I want to go here, then it'll go to green. Green says I want to commit here. Orange will want to commit maybe here, and then red will come in and say here, and then they basically just go around like this. Bidding on the rooms that they want to potentially win and grab that resource. And so it would just go around like this in a circle until everyone has gone down to their last token, at which point they have the option to then withhold it if they like. So let's say we get game state looks like this when we're done. So all 4 players have gone around. They've set their agents into the rooms that they want, and then say everyone has decided to withhold one of their agents for challenging later. So the next step would be the reveal phase. So this is where we start to reveal each room in order by number, and it starts with the armory and it goes clockwise around the library. So you would start with the armory, and this is where the constant interaction is, because every single time people are placing their tokens, and then when the reveal phase comes, they're reaching over and they're revealing their tokens. So people are always busy doing something. So for example, the armory would be first, so red and orange would come in here and they would reveal their tokens. In this case, orange has won this one, but because red loses, red has the option, do I want to challenge this? So this is where it becomes sort of a poker thing where it's like, do you call or do you raise kind of thing? And so red may say, you know what, I don't want to challenge that, I'll pass, in which case orange would then win. In this room, orange would take the sword, which is a 4, and then red would take the dagger, which is a 2. And then those are additional bidding tokens they can use the rest of this round, which we'll get into in a minute, but they would basically take those tokens. And it just keeps going around this way for the next room. So next room, it would be the garden. So they would reveal their tokens and they take the sum. And the sum here is, okay, well, blue would win that unless red decides they want to challenge. And red has a token here that no one knows, but they have a public 2. And red knows that to beat blue, they gotta come above a 10. So they'll say, well, you know what? I'll challenge that. So they'll basically put in what they want, unknown, and then blue has the option to either call or effectively, raise or meet the challenge. In this case, maybe blue will say, no, I'll save it for something else. These would be revealed. Red wins. So in this case, because it's in one of the corner rooms, red would win one of these cards. Again, we'll cover the allies in a little bit, but just know that these
challenges are secret too. So when you challenge face down.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. So that way you don't know. No one really knows what's going to happen until it's revealed. And that's where a lot of the fun comes from, because it's like you challenge thinking you might win it, but then you might not. But then the other person may not meet the challenge, so then you might win it. So that's where a lot of the tension and the fun comes from. But that's basically the way this works, and it goes all the way around in order of these rooms until all of them are resolved. Everyone takes their rewards from each room and then passes to the next round, and they just do it again. And then each room, obviously, again, we already covered, like, each room is going to award something different. In the case of, say, like ties, the if there's a tie, what happens is you'll notice here in each of these rooms, there's a first place and a second place. Again, in the corner rooms, the first place is a card. So if you win first place, you're going to get one of these cards. Second place is going to win that resource. So in this case, blue would have won, one of these favor resource tokens. Well, first player would have gained this. If they tie and no one wins it, they would both get the second place reward instead. So even when you're losing, you're still getting something, which I have found is also like an emergent strategy in some cases. People will sometimes purposefully lose a room just so they can get a resource.
So how would that work in the armory then? Because there's two different choices, and there's only
in
one.
The armory, so ties are handled this way in every room except the armory. That's the only exception. So, and I find a lot of fun tension occur in this room because some people, when there's a tie, they have to decide, do I really want to commit an extra agent to get this token, or do I want to just lose it so the other person can't gain it either? And so it ends up being a really fun decision-making room. But that's the only room that doesn't allow a tie.
So if there's a tie in the armory, no one gets anything.
Correct. But everywhere else, a tie will split the second place reward instead. And so it just goes in that loop. And again, once people learn that loop, once they play the loop once, they have it, it's down, and they just play. And then what happens is over time, you'll notice these cards, over time, players will start to collect these allies. As they win these rooms, they'll start to collect these allies. And these ally cards are what actually help you adjust your strategy. They help you improve your bidding. They help you react to things occurring on the board and in the game state. And that's where a lot of the game also occurs. And then, of course, they have their objective cards, what they'll collect over time as they win this room. But that's the basic game loop of how this goes.
So you said obviously there's a tableau building, which is those allies that you're collecting.
Correct.
So I guess now would be a good time let's take a look at some of those allies that you can collect.
Yes. So these are the garden allies. So these would be the first set of allies that you'd run into. And so these, and again, like I said, each room is going to have its own identity based on like what sort of people are going to be in there and what sort of things they can do. So the garden, for example, these are going to be the types of allies that are going to be more secretive, subversive. They're going to be doing some cloak and dagger type stuff for you, right? So, for example, because this is bidding, there's a lot of unknown information in this game. So something that these guys are going to help you be able to do is manipulate tokens. So, for example, you see for these two especially, the assassin here will actually let you move one of your unrevealed tokens. So before you get to the reveal phase, they'll actually let you move one. So if you want to move it out of a room you might lose, or if you want to move one into a room to reinforce it, that's sort of what this card lets you do. The blackmailer here, similar approach, but it actually lets you swap yours with someone else's. So it's a way, if maybe someone is in a room uncontested, that's a way for you to swoop in and you win that room uncontested, and you force them into a room that they're going to maybe lose anyways or something like that. So that's sort of what the garden cards are going to allow you to do is sort of manipulation of tokens and information and stuff like that.
So I see there's three little icons underneath each portrait. What do those icons indicate?
So all the ally cards are going to have this. Every ally has 3 tags. I think there's 12 tags total. This is basically their identity. This describes, the first icon sort of describes the room they're from. The second one describes how they're activated, and the third one describes sort of their ability. So there's 3 groups, 4 of each group. So in this case, this first icon tells you they're from the garden. The second one tells you that they need to be activated by some sort of resource. And the third one tells you that they manipulate. And these icons are very important because objectives are going to use these icons to score. And the council are going to use these icons to score as well. So that's sort of the tableau building part.
Oh, okay, interesting. All right, so let's hop over to the throne room then.
Okay, so the throne room. So these are sort of like the king's, closer confidants or like officials. So these are going to be the types that are going to respond to some of the game state or what other players are doing. So for example, here, the Chamberlain of Whispers. So every time you use one of your agent cards to do something, you will turn them sideways to exhaust them, kind of like in Magic, right? That means they can only get used once in a round. And so what the Chamberlain of Whispers allows you to do is respond to something on the board. In this case, if an opponent moves any tokens, so let's say an opponent uses one of their garden allies to move a token around, you can actually exhaust this one to unexhaust another card that might let you activate again later this round. And then in the case of the tax collector, whenever an opponent pays to activate one of their allies, you're just going to get money from it. So this is sort of like a slight engine building mechanic as well. So like if you have a card that needs gold to activate, and you have this guy here as well, you could use him to build up your reserves, so then you can kind of pay to fire off someone else. So these guys are mostly here to respond and be beneficial to what everyone else is doing.
Okay.
And that's their identity.
We go to the chapel.
Yeah, chapel guys. So these are going to be more protective. So the chapel folks are going to be the types that are going to protect you from things, or they're going to help you maybe benefit from small things. So for example, the indulgent seller here, she's sort of like the chapel's version of the tax collector, but instead of gaining gold, they're going to gain favor instead, which again, one of the 2 main resources you're going to use to activate allies. And then the penitent monk here, he's basically protecting you from having any of your agents moved. So like if there's someone who's leaning heavily into garden allies right now, if you have this guy out here, he will actually protect your tokens from being moved, your agents from being moved around and manipulated. So these guys are going to be more protective.
Okay, and that brings us to the 4th room, which is the library.
Yes. Library. So the library, these guys are going to be sort of a catch-all and also some information gathering. So in this case, the Master Logician here, you're basically just going to end up getting additional influence points if you have any resources left. I know a lot of games will just build that in at the end. You get 1 point for every 3 of this you have. I actually wanted to build that into the cards to make that an active thing people chase or want. So that's sort of kind of what they'll do, and they'll do a lot of little things. The library allies will also interact with the objectives a little bit. Basically all the other little things that no one else interacts with, they sort of do that. And then also the quiet scribe here, he's an example of information gathering. So you could actually use him during the player turns when you're placing agent tokens. He will actually let you peek at someone else's unrevealed agent to help you determine if you want to actually place your agent there, do you want to go somewhere else. But it might give you a little bit of information because, again, information in this game is at a premium.
Okay, great. And you've mentioned objective cards a few times. Yes. So let's take a look at a couple of objective cards in the game.
Yeah. So these are very simple. So again, you'll notice these icons are the exact same icons that are on all the ally cards. And so with these cards here, this first one, Coded Knowledge, if you have one garden agent and you have 2 library or allies, sorry, you have 1 garden ally and 2 library allies, you get 3 points for this objective. Very simple, very clean, easy to understand and read. But these again are private, and you hold them until the very end of the game when you do final scoring. So you could theoretically collect 5, 6, 7 objective cards to kind of scare people off a little bit, but you don't actually meet any of them. or you could only have a couple, but you meet all of them. That's that sort of that hidden information part, so people can't truly know how well you're doing. But again, very simple to understand and resolve.
How many objective cards do you typically collect over the course of a game? I'm sure it varies,
Um,
but
so the game will go 8 rounds. Generally, the game only goes 8 rounds, just because I found any shorter is not satisfying, and more than that, it gets to be a drag. So there's only 8 rounds. So if you were to win that room, you'll every round you'll end up with 8. Most people don't. Most people will end up with anywhere from 2 to 4 or 2 to 5, give or take.
okay. And then we come to the council, the
Yes.
climax of the game. So here's a couple of
Yes.
samples of two council members.
Yes. So these are so I again, this is the climax of the game. I want these cards to be easy to understand, easy to resolve. And I basically designed 2 scoring method types. So the first here, the demagogue. The first one is you get 3 points for each card you have with this icon, and you also get 5 points if you have 3 or more of the second icon. So again, this is scoring you based on your tableau, and if you have any of these icons in your tableau and how many you have. And so that's the first one: is do you have this? You get points for this certain amount of points for this icon, and you'll get an additional amount of points if you have 3 or more of another icon. That's a very typical scoring method. And then the one over here, the zealot, this is going to score you based on sets. So you're going to get 5 points for each set of these 2 icons. And generally, these 2 icons might be 2 different rooms. I try to have a little bit of overlap with the icons, but not too much, because if you lean into one room too heavy, you might get a lot of good abilities during the game, but you're not going to score well at the end. So it's definitely some good decision space for some players. But those are the 2 common scoring methods. And then at the bottom, I have the or section. So at the very end, if you end up bidding on these guys, you might actually get a council member that actually doesn't give you that many points. You maybe won it because no one else challenged you and you needed to put your agent somewhere. So you might win this card, but this top section probably doesn't give you that many points. The or at the bottom is basically you're going to get at least 6 points from this card regardless. If the top one doesn't score you at least 6, you take the 6 at the bottom and be done with it. So that way, if you're winning council members, you're still getting something out of it. The other reason the 6 down here is because if 2 players happen to tie on a council member, and this has been a real contentious design thing. If it used to be that if you tied, no one won the council member. Council member was lost, no one got those points. It didn't feel great. So those points are now also, if 2 players tie on a council member, they just split those 6 points, and they each get 3, and they just call it done.
Okay. So are you players using their agents also to bid for these council members at the end of the game?
Yes. So these guys are. I didn't show it in the play, but at the beginning of the game, a number of these guys are revealed. That's equal to the number of players.
Right.
Face up, so they're visible at all times. So you can kind of what to work towards. And then there's 2 more that are drawn, and they're face down, so you don't know who they are. And then when it gets to this climax, those last two are revealed, so you see all of them. And then at that point, there's basically one more round of bidding, just like in the main game. One more round of bidding to claim control over any of those council members. And it plays exactly the same. If you have the sword or dagger tokens, the 4 or 2, if you have those and you didn't use them in that last round, you can carry them into this. You could use them there. You can withhold a token and use it to challenge. So all the same rules apply. You could even pay to use some of your allies that might help you do things like peek and manipulate tokens. All of that's still on the table. All of that's still open. But it's just I guess the stakes are raised at this point because this is your last big chance for a good scoring boost.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I like to close out every interview to give viewers some information about where they can go to learn more about the game. So if someone's watching this episode and says, "Hey, Crown Dagger sounds like a very cool game," and I'll tell you, I have one of my friends that I play board games with, and if anytime there's a game with secret objectives, she says, "I'm in. I'll play any game with secret objectives." So I, I think she'll already be sold when she sees this. So if someone wants more information about Crown Dagger, where can they go?
Well, right now I don't have a ton of public information on it just because I'm still in playtesting. But my website, gildedfoxgames.com, that's going to be the place to find almost anything. Any other games I'm working on, this game. I also have a Discord, which I think you might put in the show notes. That would be a good place to do it. That's a place that will actually show the design journey. That will show playtesting results, and that'll actually show all the games I'm working on too, so people can have a kind of a good idea of what I'm working on, the design journey, what kind of feedback I'm getting from playtest changes I'm making, things like that. I have a YouTube channel as well, same name. Unfortunately, I have nothing there yet, but eventually those are going to be probably some rule videos, explanations, teases, things like that. And then also an Instagram, which is a little more active. I'll usually show like non-final art. I might show sketches. I might show cards as they're coming up. I might show peeks about other games and components, things like that. So I would say those are probably the most important places to find anything. And then Crown and Dagger will eventually have its own page with its design journey on there as well.
Okay, great. And as you said, all of those links will be in the show notes. So if anyone wants to learn more about the game, all the information will be below. Chris, thank you so much for coming on to tell me about your game. I really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. And I want to just remind all of the viewers that Tell Me About Your Game, primarily exists so we can get the word out about projects that are being worked on by new board game designers. It's a real challenge in the industry to get known if you aren't well established. So we're trying to help out with that. And in addition, we are a community. There is a Discord server that is exclusively for new game designers. Chris is a member there and he's been active. So if there are any new designers who are watching this, please reach out to me. My contact information will also be in the show notes, and we can have a discussion. And then maybe one day you can be a guest on the show. So Chris, thank you again. We loved hearing about your game.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone have a good day.